When do the stimulus checks start arriving?
A great important question, and if this bill stays on track as we expect it to, it is advancing through the Congress. The president is on track to sign this law very shortly once that process is completed, and we will then have what, in my view, and I've been around for a while tracking this sort of thing, one of the most consequential and one of the most progressive pieces of legislation in our history. To directly answer your question, $1,400 in checks to 158.5 million American households starting to go out days after passage. So we're now pretty confident that we have this architecture well underway. We've been to this part of the rodeo before, and that's what we're looking at.
One of the criticisms of this legislation, Jared, is that it's just too much. It's a lot of money, $2 trillion, almost 10% of our entire economy, and it's not targeted enough. And one of those places I wanted to ask you about was the money that's going to go to states. States are going to get money. Many of them need them, but many of them do not, like Utah or California, which is in surplus, or Florida. Why are those states getting emergency rescue money?
So a lot there to unpack, and at least one of your calculations I want to challenge. The reason you came to 10% of GDP is because you're assuming the whole plan spends out in 1 year. That's not the case, according to the Congressional Budget Office, which has it scored out more gradually. Now, to be clear, the checks and the unemployment coverage get out right away. I think probably that's one of the most important things listeners can understand. And as you yourself pointed out, Sarah, if we don't pass this within the next 5 days, enhanced unemployment benefits for 11 million people will expire. I also would take issue with looking at the states strictly from a perspective of the revenue hole. I mean, that's part of this of the calculus here, and I understand why people want to look at it. But you also have to understand that one of the key goals of the American Rescue Plan is to finally put this virus behind us. And every state in the union needs help doing that. It needs top-down government coordination in terms of logistics of the type that this administration has been providing, especially compared to the last administration, and not just controlling the virus, but producing and distributing the vaccine. So you can't just look at the revenue side for the states. You also have to look at the cost side.
Jared, do you think inflation and interest rates will rise as a result of this bill, and by when?
I think what we are seeing here is a very important distinction, and I've been tracing these numbers pretty obsessively, including as I was waiting to come on, I was clicking through and looking at them, is the difference between heat and overheat. So I know that there are concerns out there related to overheating problems, and of course that is always a risk that you want to consider. But when you look at that risk through our lens, it pales by comparison against the risks of doing too little, of putting the virus behind us, of providing relief for families and businesses, safely reopening schools, getting the checks out, getting the unemployment insurance out. And if you consider the spend out point that I made to Sarah earlier, if you consider how much slack there still is in this economy, with an unemployment rate for blacks of almost 10%, and Hispanics of 8.5%, so there's a lot of slack out there. And when you consider that some of these benefits are going to be saved before they're spent, then I think that puts some downward pressure on the overheating concerns.
And Jared, once this does get passed, what do you think will be the top priority for the economic team for President Biden? Are we talking tech regulation, or are we talking more stimulus and infrastructure, tax increases? What will be the focus?
It's a great question, because and the way I look at it, and more importantly, the way the president looks at it, is moving from rescue to recovery. One of the things that I've tried to stress, including in our discussion today about the American Rescue Plan, is it is constructed to be of a magnitude to finally get us to the other side of this crisis, something we heretofore have not achieved. Once we get there, we're still faced with a lot of the problems that were embedded in our economy before the crisis struck. So simply getting back to where we were is insufficient for this president. So the recovery agenda includes investments in clean energy, in education, in healthcare, in racial equity, and in infrastructure. And yes, there will be pay-fors in those measures, and we're not ready to talk about them yet. But the president has consistently said that temporary programs can be deficit financed, but permanent programs, we should try to pay for them.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.